Hello everyone, Epic here, and today we've got an interesting thing to show you all. Two Persona 5 betas. One from December 4th, 2015, and the other from March 8th, 2016. These are thus far some of the earliest playable builds that resemble the final version of Persona 5 we have. So it's going to be really interesting taking a look and seeing what is so different about these builds, and what fundamentally has changed from December to September 2016, when the game launched in Japan. But enough rambling, we got a lot of differences to cover. I hope you all enjoy the video, and I'm gonna let Kiz take it away here with a small disclaimer we should put before anything else.
Now, before we jump into the video, quick disclaimer. We will not be distributing these copies of the betas. And two, we are in no way, shape, or form associated with Atlas or the team behind Persona 5. Now, with this being said, this video is for purely educational purposes only. So, if you want to find these betas yourself, you are going to have to go out there and search for them. We will not be redistributing these. Now, with this being said, let's dive in to the December 4th, 2015 Persona 5 build and the March 8th, 2016 build.
And here we are, at the end of the road. The Mementos depths, practical prison. Confidently and screaming, we have to steal the hearts of everybody. So, the music's killer, right? Oh yeah, Freedom Security wasn't in the game yet. So, before we can cover the missing songs, let's talk about the Prison of Sloth, or the Mementos Depths. In this version, the depths are more like a prison, with cells and the like. It's really confined and claustrophobic. But before I can get into that, we gotta cover an issue. Combat's kinda broken. Like, really broken. So, a little bit of history on this. The disc that this particular beta came from was corrupted, and with the aid of another disc, the people who compiled this were able to restore the combat. It doesn't crash the game anymore, but, you're permanently stuck in the pre-battle position before the tearaway animation, which, gives you menu controls. So, this is not just an issue in the Mementos Depths because there's a number of guards to dodge, but this is an issue in all palaces because every palace has mandatory encounters. So, we can't progress in them, and some of them just hang. We'll talk about that a little later. But for now, just know we weren't able to get a ton of footage in the palaces in this version, just because of the combat hang. The combat softlock, we'll call it. Now getting back to the prison, I feel like it's obvious why this was changed to a more kind of open design. In general, this place is claustrophobic, and the depths in the final game kind of do have that feeling, but it's a bit more of a claustrophobia-esque feeling, rather than feeling like you're actually in a prison. It's not a bad change. And honestly, I think the biggest reason is just to let you see the guards easier. Although, an interesting side to this whole thing is that the dashing mechanic was not in this version of the game, and, well, it seems like the hiding mechanic was either not implemented in the depths at this time, or was yet to be fully implemented in the game, although I suspect it was fully implemented in Kamoshida's palace. And sadly, that's really all we can view of this segment of the game, because of the forced encounter after you reach the first segment of the palace. So to begin this section off, The intro conversation to Sai's Palace seems to be unchanged from the final version, which hints that the starting area was one temporary, or this version of the beta we have had this on the way out and it was just not changed yet. This is most likely either because it was just temporary from the beginning, or the playtesters who played this version gave mixed results on this entrance. Now, aside from the entrance, this location remains mostly the same. The geometry inside Sai's Palace is completely unchanged from the original, with the only bizarre difference being the size of the vents, which matches the size depicted in the anime, which is bizarre to say the least. But sadly, we cannot go any further in this palace because the game just softlocks. It seems that Sai and her shadow compatriots are not present in this version, or the data is corrupted, causing the game just to softlock with no course of action to get past this. But if I had to guess, the palace was probably mostly complete by this point in development, so there's probably not much different, besides maybe more games or the games weren't quite implemented yet. But that is just a guess. The last two things we can cover about the P5 December beta is that this was the last version to have the cafeteria, which, a lot like P3 Fez and P4G, allows you to have lunch with your confidants, or cooperations as they were called in this version. So that's really it. There's nothing too grandiose about this, and the suspicion we have is that this either didn't fit into the flow of P5's whole confidant system, or it was removed just because it made your school social links so much easier to rank up. The only other noteworthy thing in this version is just some of the strange fever dream-like stuff, like the fact that after Shido's confession, if you go to the hideout, there's just no one there. And other things like just missing voice lines in the music for certain events. Shido's confession has missing voice lines, and Akuma's confession is missing the small little jingle song that plays after the accent on air thing. That's really it. There's not more we can go over in this version just because of the soft locking and crashes we're experiencing. But the kind of TLDR this beta is really close to the final product, but has a few differences that just make it feel like a fever dream, really. Definitely feels like something like one of those, I made the song from memory kind of things, where it looks and sounds just about right, but something off about it. But that's not the last beta we have to cover. And I'll see you in the third section.
Hey everybody, Drive Me Crazy here, and so I just wanted to give a little bit of some background information here, just for these small things that you don't really notice in this beta or in this video. In this section, it's really hard to notice, but the camera is slightly more tilted in the casino starting point than it typically is in the actual final product. But before we get into everything else, just one more interesting thing here. The version of Life Will Change that plays is not the lyrical version, it's the instrumental version that plays in every other dungeon in the game. Now, when you get into the fight with the guard, you actually have a buffed up Arsene for the introduction. In this version, you do not. You get the Arsene that you typically get in Kamoshida's Palace, but there isn't really that much of a difference anyway, considering you always crit here no matter what skill you have, because it's, you know, it's scripted that way. But I'll just let you guys listen here. There's no sound effects. There's just no sound effects. It's really fucking weird. But besides those things, everything is exactly the same from animation-wise to the final product that we got, to the final version of Persona 5 for the PS3 and PS4.
Okay, so this was a huge shock, to be sure. I really wish I had captured the audio, because all of us were flipping our collective shits when this happened. So, what happened? Well, based on two things. One, the fact that 4-2 itself is not a playable day normally, and second, in the little corner, there was a mention of the date set to 4-2-1. So, I'm going to assume that 4-2 is the slotted date, at least in-game, that the escape takes place. So artificially skipping to it leaves us in a game state that is simultaneously at the beginning of the game, but you're also allowed to go outside at night, which you're not able to do until about the end of May, normally, at least as well traveling. So, yeah, that's really fucking strange, but what's stranger is that you just can't progress time. When you try to sleep, you just wake up on 4-2 at night. So effectively, you're just stuck in a Groundhog's Day-esque loop. So you have to use the date changer function that's built into the dev menu, which that's a really nice way of segueing to say that the entire ending of Persona 5 base is in this version of the game. And this version, to remind, is the March 8th build, which is about 6 months before release, which is, I'm not gonna lie, really shocking to see that all the cutscenes and even the last segment where you go talk to your confidants for one last time is in this version. It's really interesting and intriguing to know that this was finished pretty early on, relatively speaking. And I know it probably shouldn't be as shocking, because this is about the time on release where everything is more about just wrapping up bugs and whatnot. But with that kind of being said, this is one last thing we kind of need to talk about before the video kind of wraps up. And the last thing is flatly that the Holy Grail and Quillbath world are in this version of the game. They're unchanged. Even the bad ending is in the game, minus the music, since Freedom and Security is still not in the game, which itself is really weird. And, well, honestly, besides some placeholder nonsense that crashed the game, there really isn't anything that's super strange in this version, aside from no another versions of the palace themes. This version is really more or less the final version of P5 we got. There's not really anything too distinctly different about this version, aside from the fact that there's just missing tracks, no lyrical, no another versions, stuff like that. But ultimately, that's minor stuff that could have really been added really shortly before release. It's really just shocking to see how complete this version is, considering the other beta we were playing was so unplayable because of the corruption. It's really refreshing, actually, to see just how close Persona 5 was to completion about 6 months before everything. Anyhow, I'm done rambling. Let's get to the outro, gentlemen. When it's all said and done, these betas are interesting, but sadly not nearly as interesting or thought-provoking as the cut content and models Persona 5 has had over the same time span. But I do hope all of you learned something from this video, or have a newfound appreciation for what 5 ended up as. I, for one, got a very firm reminder of why I fell in love with Persona 5, and, well, for all the issues it has, it's still my first Persona game, and introduced me to a series I've grown to love and would not have otherwise tried out. That's just my 2 cents on it all. I'm gonna blip up on screen here the thoughts of my compatriots, Drive Me Crazy and, Ant. But with it all said and done, I hope you all have enjoyed the video quite well. This has been the Theater of Creators. We will all see you guys on the next show. Until then, bye-bye!